The sun barely crested the horizon as a private jet touched down on the cracked tarmac of Ilopango Military Airport in El Salvador. No press awaited, no formal welcome, just a black car idling in the shadows. A lone figure stepped out, his face obscured by the dawn's haze, Senator Chris Van Hollen. In his hand, he clutched a sealed letter, its contents a plea to El Salvador's prison board for a face-to-face meeting with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a man President Donald J. Trump had deported in disgrace months earlier. Garcia wasn't a misunderstood migrant. He was a convicted criminal, flagged on a terrorist watch list, tied to MS-13, and accused of human trafficking and domestic violence. Yet here was a U.S. senator risking his career to meet him. The question hung heavy. Why? No cameras followed Van Hollen into that car, but across the ocean, in the White House, President Trump, now the 47th president, watched closely. He had been warned, and what he knew was far worse than anyone imagined. In the Situation Room, Trump sat, arms folded, staring at a declassified folder. The room was silent. "Sir," an intelligence advisor said softly, "we have the flight logs. Van Hollen is in El Salvador, and he's made contact with Garcia's inner circle." Trump didn't blink. "So he did it?" he muttered. "He crossed the line." The advisor nodded. "This may violate the Logan Act, negotiating foreign policy as a private citizen against U.S. interests." Trump leaned forward, flipping to a page detailing a Tennessee police report. Garcia, caught with 7 undocumented passengers, no license, suspected of trafficking. Local officers had called the FBI, but Biden's FBI ordered his release. Trump's hand clenched into a fist. And now they want to bring him back? Are they out of their minds? The advisor's silence was answer enough. "Get me everything," Trump said. "We're showing the American people the truth." In San Salvador, Van Hollen sat alone in a government waiting room, staring at a blank wall. He had submitted his request hours ago, a special meeting with Garcia, locked in a maximum security cell. Something felt off. No one acknowledged him. A stern-faced official approached. "Senator, you are denied access." Van Hollen stood. "On what grounds?" "I'm here for humanitarian concerns. This is international justice." The official's reply was icy. "Mr. Garcia is a convicted criminal awaiting trial for transnational crimes. He does not receive political visits, not from senators, not from presidents, not from ghosts." 2 armed guards stepped in. "You will be escorted back to your plane." Just like that, Van Hollen was expelled from a country he'd come to lecture. His secret trip was exposed, but the real storm was brewing in Washington, where Trump prepared to make it public. To the voters, to the grieving families who had lost loved ones to crimes linked to men like Garcia. Kilmar Abrego. Garcia's name wasn't always known, but in law enforcement circles, his file was infamous. Born in El Salvador, he entered the U.S. illegally during the Obama administration, blending into the shadows until a Tennessee Highway Patrol stop. No driver's license, 7 people crammed in a van, and a name flagged on a terrorist watch list with MS-13 ties. When officers called the FBI, they were stunned by the response. "Release him! He's not a priority." Later, Maryland police documented Garcia's wife filing a restraining order alleging he beat her. Neighbors reported noise complaints. Yet the system let him walk again and again. Now a U.S. senator was fighting to free him. At the U.S. Embassy in El Salvador, Ambassador Daniels stared at the letter Van Hollen had hand-delivered. "This is insane," he muttered. The senator had bypassed the White House, the State Department, and all protocol, carrying a sealed appeal on Senate letterhead. Kilmar Garcia deserves fair treatment and consideration for return to the United States. He is a victim of political deportation. Daniels shook his head. Does he know who this man is? Or worse, does he know and still want him back? The embassy staff exchanged glances. El Salvador's government was furious, insulted by the implication their justice system was inferior. The prison board rejected the request outright. Van Hollen was sent back to the airport, but the damage was done. Trump had a copy of the letter. That evening he stood at the White House press briefing podium, the air thick with tension, every major network live. He held the letter aloft. Today, I speak directly to the American people, not as a politician, but as your president, your protector. He lifted the page. This letter was hand-delivered by Senator Chris Van Hollen to El Salvador officials. In it, he pleads for the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He paused, scanning the stunned press corps. Garcia is not a refugee. He is not innocent. He is a violent criminal tied to MS-13, accused of trafficking, once listed on a terrorist watch list with a history of domestic abuse. Yet Senator Van Hollen traveled secretly to another country against U.S. interests to fight for this man. Gasps echoed. This isn't just wrong, it's dangerous, Trump said, voice rising. This isn't about politics. It's about protecting America from the evil hiding behind fake compassion. His words settled, and across the nation, Americans felt a pull in their chests. Many wept, not for politics, but for truth. In Kentucky, a grandmother sat in her recliner, tears streaming as she thought of her grandson, lured into an MS-13 gang at 14. In New Mexico, a mother clutched a photo of her teenage daughter killed in gang crossfire. For them, Garcia wasn't a name on a file. He was a symbol of pain. To hear a senator defended such a man felt like betrayal. Phone lines lit up. Radio stations, news shows, and community meetings buzzed, not with political rhetoric, but with demands for justice, safety, truth. Trump's legal team moved swiftly. The Logan Act, a 1799 law barring unauthorized Americans from negotiating with foreign governments against U.S. interests, was invoked. The Justice Department launched an inquiry, issuing subpoenas for Van Hollen's flight records, communications, and coordination with foreign officials. A White House staffer uncovered an encrypted email from Van Hollen's assistant to an unknown source before the trip, raising a chilling question. Was this planned long before the public knew? Democrats scrambled, calling it a misunderstanding, but the public wasn't buying it. Trump didn't attack with insults. He let the facts speak, and that hit harder. Late one night, the phone rang in the West Wing. Trump answered. It was El Salvador's President Guillermo Sanchez. President Trump, Sanchez said, thank you for standing with us. We were shocked a U.S. senator would interfere with our justice system. We denied his request. Garcia is not going anywhere. Trump nodded. You did the right thing. His crimes hurt us both. Sanchez paused. Garcia was involved in trafficking minors. We found documents, photos. I'm sending them to your office. You need to see what he is. Trump exhaled. Send everything. The American people deserve the truth. In a quiet Capitol office, a young aide named Michael sat frozen. He had stumbled on an internal email thread between Van Hollen and two Democratic consultants. Subject, Garcia's strategy. A file, KG relocation plan, outlined steps to pressure El Salvador for Garcia's release, outreach to advocacy groups, cable news talking points, and a plan to bypass Trump's administration. Michael's hands trembled. He wasn't a politician, just an intern, but he printed the file and called the Office of Legal Counsel. Within an hour, federal agents collected it. That single printout would soon shake Washington. On Fox News, Teresa Ramos sat beside Laura Ingraham, her voice shaking. "My daughter Maria was 17. She got caught in a bad relationship with an MS-13 boy. Kilmar Garcia ran that group. When Maria tried to leave, they threatened her. 2 months later, she was found dead behind a shopping center." Tears welled. Why would a senator fight for him? The camera zoomed in on her broken face. Across the country, viewers wept. Teresa's pain was raw, American. The scandal split the nation. Some media downplayed it, calling Van Hollen's trip diplomatic. Others painted Garcia as a victim of Trump-era injustice. But the facts were undeniable. In a Tucker Carlson interview, Trump held nothing back. "I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or Martian," he said. "If you fight for criminals like Garcia, if you break the law to free someone on a terror watch list, there will be consequences." Carlson asked, "Did Van Hollen endanger national security?" Trump nodded. "Absolutely. The American people deserve accountability." Protests erupted, some supporting Trump, others defending Van Hollen. But one truth rang louder. This wasn't about politics. It was about right and wrong. In Virginia, Elena held her son Mateo's last school photo. At 12, he was kidnapped by an MS-13 ring tied to Garcia, his body found 2 weeks later. "I was told justice would be served," Elena said, tears flooding. "Then a senator flies to help the man behind my son's murder. Why?" Her words, shared on social media, became America's cry. A folder arrived at the Department of Homeland Security, stamped "Confidential." Inside were transcripts of Van Hollen's aide communicating with Salvadoran agents, promising economic aid for Garcia's release. This wasn't diplomacy, it was near bribery. The leak reached Trump's senior legal advisor, then the president. "This wasn't a mistake," Trump said. "This was deliberate." That evening he addressed the nation, voice steady but emotional. "How many more lives must be shattered before we draw the line?" The truth moved millions to tears. Van Hollen returned to a storm. Reporters shouted, "Did you promise aid for Garcia? Does this violate the Logan Act? Did you act alone?" He said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. His aides scrambled, allies went quiet. The walls closed in. In Baltimore, Jorge Morales sat in a small church, holding a photo of his son Isaac, 19, stabbed by an MS-13 gang linked to Garcia. "He wants that man back?" Jorge asked, eyes red. On national television, he held Isaac's photo. "Thank you, President Trump, for sending these monsters away. Please don't let them return." Millions wept with him. The Senate Ethics Committee launched a bipartisan investigation into Van Hollen's conduct, his trip, communications, and possible national security violations. Emails revealed he knew Garcia's violent past, but pushed forward, one message stating, "If Trump gets ahead, we lose the narrative." But Trump was ahead, and the nation saw the truth. Van Hollen stood before cameras, pale. "I believe in second chances," he said. No one clapped. A reporter asked, "Did you know Garcia was accused of trafficking and violence?" His face fell. "I did," he whispered. The room gasped. His myth crumbled. In a Pentagon cybercrime unit, technician Carla found a hidden folder on a laptop tied to Garcia's Maryland network, named Justice Ties. It contained communications between a foreign NGO and Van Hollen's Senate email, policy drafts, financial transactions, and a voice note from Garcia. I gave them what they wanted. They promised asylum if I stayed quiet. If they don't, I'll speak. This wasn't misconduct. It was collusion. The evidence reached Trump, who said, "This is bigger than Van Hollen. This is a system failure." In Ohio, Marine veteran Darnell Hayes held a photo of his niece Jasmine, 16, who overdosed in an MS-13 drug ring tied to Garcia. At a rally, he said, "My commander-in-chief sent the man responsible out of our borders. They're trying to bring him back." The crowd stood in silence, some crying. Trump called Darnell personally. "You're not alone. We'll make sure no one forgets Jasmine." For Darnell, that was honor. Trump entered the Roosevelt room with a manila envelope. Cameras clicked. I gave them time to correct their mistakes. They didn't. He revealed Garcia's arrest records, victim photos, and Van Hollen's communications. This isn't a conspiracy. It's fact. When you negotiate with criminals behind your country's back, that's betrayal. From West Virginia to Chicago, Americans wept, not just in grief, but in relief. Someone was fighting for them. Congress grew quiet. Senators avoided Van Hollen. The Ethics Committee reviewed his emails, calls, and letter line by line. "This isn't politics," the chairman said. "This is about national trust." Trump addressed the nation from the Oval Office, not pointing fingers, but protecting people. "I'm not here to serve politicians. I'm here to serve you." Even skeptics listened. He wasn't shouting, he was leading. The White House mailroom overflowed with letters, children's drawings, veterans' thanks, survivors' stories. A letter from 13-year-old Isaiah in Texas stood out, written shakily. "Thank you for fighting for us. I miss my brother. He'd be proud." Trump held it up in an address, voice breaking. "This is why I do what I do." Millions cried, not for politics, but for buried pain. At the Lincoln Memorial, families gathered, candles lit, holding photos of loved ones lost to MS-13. Teresa Ramos, Jorge Morales, and Darnell Hayes stood together. "I didn't come for politics," Teresa said. "I came because someone cared. My president did." Trump joined them, not for cameras, but to listen. He hugged them, wiped tears. No sound bites, just a leader with his people. America felt united in truth. International headlines exploded. U.S. Senator linked to gang scandal. El Salvador praises Trump. Victims' families applaud Trump. President Sanchez lauded Trump. The U.S. has proven it won't protect criminals. The DOJ confirmed a Logan Act review, but a cultural shift was underway. Voters felt seen. In diners, barbershops, and churches, people asked, "Why did it take so long for someone to stand up for us?" Trump's team launched Justice First, targeting violent gang members and criminals protected by loopholes. In Kansas, a retired officer sent a thank you card. In Georgia, a family held a vigil with "Thank you, Mr. President" posters. The media, once mocking, reported cautiously. America wasn't just watching, it was feeling. In a Montgomery County classroom, Ms. Barlow stood before an empty seat. Daniels, a fifth grader taken by an MS-13 recruitment tied to Garcia. Watching news of Van Hollen's actions, she wept. How could anyone defend that man? She wrote to the White House, not expecting a reply. A week later, the president's office called, "Trump wants to meet you and talk about Daniel." For the first time, she felt seen. At a town hall, a woman thanked Trump for fighting for her brother's justice. "That's what this job is about," he said. "I don't work for politicians. I work for you." To those protecting criminals, he said, "Your time is up." The room fell silent, then filled with tears, not of anger, but of heart. The week ended with bells ringing coast to coast, schools holding silences, churches lighting candles, flags waving, not in anger, but in honor. Trump spoke from the Oval Office. "This wasn't about me. It was about you, your voices, your pain, your courage." He held Isaiah's letter. "If we want a better future, we protect what matters most. Our people, our children, our country." As the broadcast faded, a divided nation stood together, healing. To the forgotten, this story was theirs.